thank you, Dom and Drea, for a beautiful music service. I love preaching from that standpoint because I get to follow that awesomeness, and I just feel ready to go afterward. And thank you for your words, Thomas. As we step into what we're about to read, there's kind of a fourth place you're in, right? And that's the sun's going down and darkness is coming into your life. We all have those moments, right? And so it's a perfect lead-in into what we're going to be talking about this morning. So a lot of times when I get up here, I target our younger people, but now we've updated our children's classes, and so our preschoolers are not in here on Fourth Sundays anymore. So I'm going to do a little bit more of a sermon-y thing. Sorry if you were hoping for something more youth groupy, sorry. But as I say that, please speak up. You guys are awesome, and half the time I'm saying something and I'm completely flubbing over my words, and y'all have some awesome insight that you add in, and it makes it all better. So feel free to join in. It's not just me up here. With that, we're going to jump into our text. Okay, so this is the second Sunday of Easter, and we jump into John 20, chapter 20, verses 19 through 31. Okay, so when it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and the doors were locked where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." But Thomas, who was called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe." So we're going to stop there real quick. We'll come back to the verse later. Nathan, I'm sorry, I'm going to make you have to jump around the slides this morning because I changed my mind on how we were going to do this. When did I change my mind? 5 minutes ago, right? You know how it goes. Hey, I'm the preacher. I get to do what I want. So, who can tell me who is the main character in this story? Jesus always is, right? Jesus! Kids' church answer, I love it. But who do we always think of in this story? Thomas. And we don't just think of Thomas. What do we call him? Doubting Thomas, right? Doubting Thomas. I feel bad for the guy, honestly. You know his only real error in this story is he wasn't in the room when Jesus arrived. He was the one out of the room off doing something else, right? That was his only error. Right? If you and I were not in that room and we came back, wouldn't we have the exact same questions? Right? So that was his real error. But we call him Doubting Thomas, right? He comes in, they tell him this wonderful news. They had just gone through that dark moment like Thomas was talking about. It was dead dark. And they're like, "Hey, the sun's rising." And Thomas is like, "I ain't going to believe it until I see the sun," right? Okay? We're right there with them. But we can even turn it around because who else was all in that room was a bunch of disciples, right? And after Jesus died on the cross, Jesus told them so many times he was coming back, right? That he was going to be there for them. He was going to take care of them. And what were they doing? Were they out preaching the good news that Jesus was going to rise again? No, they were hiding in a room. They were like cowering in fear. Who has doubts? All of them did. All of us do, right? And so it's just funny to me that we focus on Thomas. Any one of those disciples, if they weren't in that room, would have had the exact same question, the exact same reaction. So we put all the focus on all of them, and then I want to turn it around and say, well, look at us. How often do we doubt? And I will confess, when I went to look at this, so I told Valerie helps us schedule which elder is going to preach on the fourth Sunday of each month. And when I looked, I was like, yeah, I'll do this Sunday. I haven't looked at the lectionary yet. And then I looked at lectionary and I went, oh, crud. I don't want to talk about this. I had a lot of questions in myself. I have a lot of doubts about talking on this. And it's because I am Thomas. I want all the facts. You can ask Karis. She'll come in and she'll be like, I have this great idea. And she'll tell me this awesome thing. And my immediate response is, okay, tell me all the things we need to know about it. How are we going to make this work? How is it not going to ruin our lives? How is it going to make our lives better? Let's do all of the trades, risks versus rewards, pros and cons. We've got to set it all out there. And she's like, can't you just be happy for once? And I'm like, no, I need all the facts. So I am the doubter. I am the Thomas all the time. And so if you ever come and tell me something and you're like, that Josh just wanted to know all the details, that's me getting excited. It just doesn't seem like it. That's my doubter coming out, right? And, and as I say the word doubt, it really comes across as a negative word. We've built it up as this horrible thing that if you have doubt, you have failed in life. You have missed the boat. Something is wrong with you, right? That's how we all feel when we hear this word, and we don't want to feel it, and we don't want to have doubt. So how do we get out of it as quick as possible? And I'm here to tell you this morning, doubt is not a bad thing. Okay? God calls us to be doubters. And that's where I want to put our focus. Why do we want to be doubters? Because doubters bring you to question things. You don't just accept them for what they are. You want to actually find out more. It makes you dig deeper into something. And those questions bring you a perspective that can bring clarity to the situation. Instead of just accepting whatever it is and going with it, always in the back of your mind wondering, actually, is it what you should have been going with? It forces you to dig deep into it and actually determine what it is that you're supposed to be doing. That clarity then brings faith, because you're never going to know everything. So next slide. I think we skipped a bunch of slides. I've been totally, I don't know. But Francis Bacon slide. There we go. So some of you guys might know this guy. He's written a bunch of really cool quotes. Some people actually believe he might have written all of the Shakespeare stuff. Really cool guy. But he had this quote that I wanted to speak to. If we begin with certainties, we shall end in doubts. But if we begin with doubts and are patient in them, we shall end in certainties. And so that's really where I want us to live here for a little bit, is to realize that if you think you know everything, you don't know anything. If you're willing to say, I don't know, and be willing to sit in that and work through it and go find out what the answer is, you're going to come to a place of understanding. You may not know everything, you may not figure it all out, but you're going to feel in a place of power and contentment and understanding that you know everything you could know and you're where you need to be. So, doubt is a good thing if you do the right things with it, right? It's not bad. Now, what we can get from this, and I think from, as we're talking more in a minute, doubt, or the bad things are if we have a lack of doubt, first off, right? If you think you know everything, if you're certain that you don't need to have a doubt, you're probably missing something. So that's the first bad thing. The other bad thing is if in doubt you don't take action to question it and move forward. Okay? So, where else in the Bible can we talk more about doubt? I wanted to head into looking at our buddy Job from the Old Testament. We all know good old Job, right? And so this is from the Bible Project. If you ever get a chance, there is an awesome YouTube video that they put together of the book of Job that outlines it all. It's a really good story. You can get a lot out of it. It does mention in there that it's broken into three main parts. There's the prologue at the beginning, the epilogue at the end, and then in the middle is him basically working through his doubt. Okay? So, the prologue, let's see here. I have the list here of all the bad things that happened to Job. If y'all remember the story, God meets up with Satan and basically says, hey, have you seen Job? He's really awesome, right? And Satan said, that's only because you've given him everything he's ever wanted. what happens when you take it all away. So here's what he takes away. The Sabeans take all of Job's oxen and donkeys and kill all of his servants who are with them. Let's see here. Then fire from heaven comes down and burns up all of his sheep and all of his servants who were with them. Then the Chaldeans come and take all of his camels, killing all of his servants who were with them. Then a great wind comes and kills all of Job's children and their wives and families due to a collapse of a building on them where they were eating and drinking together. And then finally, he is afflicted with loathsome sores from head to toe. So those are all of the bad things that happen to him. But even worse is the people around him start turning against him, right? So his wife tells him, dude, I don't know what you did, but you should just curse God and die. It's over, it's done, right? And then his friends, and that's kind of what the middle of the story is him talking to his friends, and they're basically telling him all the ways he did something wrong to cause all of these problems. And he's saying to himself, but I'm an upright person. I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm still in a relationship with God. I'm still good. But I have no idea what's going on. And all these people around me are telling me it's my fault. It's about me. And I'm having doubts, right? And so he's really having a hard time. He's suffering alone. And then who comes into the picture? When we're having doubts, who comes to us is God. So God comes to him and he brings to God all of his doubt. He doesn't go, oh God, you're wonderful, you're right, all these afflictions, I'm good. No, he says, God, what in the world's going on? This sucks. Why did you take away all my stuff? Why are you afflicting me in this way? How dare you, God of gods, my God, do this to me? Right? And does God, in that moment, does he shame him? Does he bring more affliction upon him? Does he judge him? Does he attack him? No. He brings him in and he basically gives him a hug and says, it's okay. Right? After that, he then takes and he walks him through about, I think it was over 50 questions that he asked Job, where he's basically saying, hey, you're questioning me? How about I question you? And he starts asking him question upon question upon question, basically letting Job know, hey, as awesome of a guy as you are, and as much as you think you knew about life and your abundance and all you had, you don't know anything. And as much as you thought your friends knew about how things worked, if you do something wrong, bad things happen to you. If you do something good, good things happen to you. They didn't know anything. And so he just asks him question after question after question and leads him back to the moment of realizing that God is there for him. God is the master of it all. God is taking care of him even in doubt. God is there. Now, as Job walks away, never in this story, even all the way through the epilogue, does God ever answer the question, why bad things happen to good people? There's no answer to that. And that's what a lot of us think this book should be about. It never gets answered because there is no answer for that. The real thing that gets solved here is us understanding that God is in control, even in our doubt. So with that, how do we move forward? Because I still don't like being in doubt. It doesn't feel good. It's not what I want to do with my life. It's not where I want to live. So how do we move forward? Well, I think it's together, right? And it's with God, as we find out in the story. And we'll hop back over to our story with Thomas in a minute as well. But first, I want to go to the slide that is, how do we work through doubt? I wanted to call it healthy doubt. Here we go. So, the first thing I think we need to do, and I'm showing you all 6. I could have had them come in one at a time, but that's fine. Y'all just don't read ahead. But the first one I wanted to mention was be willing to talk about hard things. Be willing to sit in your doubt and talk it with each other. If you have a question, ask it. Don't be that person that just says, oh, I'm probably the only one with that question. It'll be okay. Let's just move on. No, ask the questions. Ask the hard things. Don't just sit there and, when somebody asks you, what was the sermon about this morning? Jesus, right? The Bible answer that the kids give. But be willing to say, hey, it was about me and my doubt and what I'm doing with it, right? Let's talk about that because it's hard. Number 2, Hudson, where are you at? I don't know where he went. Oh, he just walked. He's going to miss it. But be willing to disagree. Right? Sometimes we're afraid to not agree with each other. And I don't know why, but we just are. Hudson, he's not. That dude, he'll argue with a wall because he wants to argue. It's great. And he kind of got that from somewhere. I don't know where. I'm sure it was Karis. It was Karis. If y'all know Karis, that's not true. Okay. So be willing to disagree. Be willing to say, hey, you know what? I heard you. But I'm not in the same place as you, and let's talk about that, and let's work through it, right? And doubt, that's that moment of we disagree, we butt heads, but if you work through it together, you come to that certainty afterward. Be willing to question the things we believe. Too often, I know a lot of us may have even been raised in churches where if you ask that tough question of, do you have to be baptized to die? What if you die on the way to being baptized, right? That was always classical question that the kids would ask the teacher. The teacher would go, just believe because I told you to, and go get baptized, and quit asking these ridiculous questions, right? And that's kind of the feeling you would get. But I'm here to tell you what we should be fostering is a place where you can ask those questions, and the teacher can be willing to say, I don't know, and that's okay. Let's work through it together, right? That's where we want to be living. Questioning all those foundational beliefs. Do you have to have communion every Sunday? What if you're sick and you're at home? Do you have to get somebody to come bring communion to you, or are you going to be in a bad place? All those questions, let's talk about them. Let's work through them together. Be willing to be constructive and not destructive. So sometimes we will go into our doubts and we want to bring everyone else down with us. You believe that, I don't believe it. Well, I'm going to bring you down where I'm at. We're going to tear the whole thing down, and we're all going to feel horrible together, and it's going to be great, right? If you go into these doubt in that realm, in that world, it's all going to fall apart, and it's not going to be good for anyone. You have to be willing to, in your doubt, work towards building something new, not try to tear what's already there down. Let's see here. Number 5, be willing to leave conversations without having all the answers. Oh man, this is one hard for me. I want to know everything at the end. Okay, what did we decide? What are we going to do? What are we going to move forward with? That's how I want to leave the conversation. Is there a God? Who is he? How is he working in the world? I want to know right now. All right, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out before we leave here this morning. So I hope y'all are here for another 8 hours, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, you have to be willing to walk away in doubt with patience. Remember, as we had talked about earlier, you've got to be willing to sit in it. And that sometimes means that you walk away in that moment with doubt still. And that's okay. Got to be willing to live in it. And then the last one, the key one that we're getting through all of these verses, is be willing to bring it to God and leave it with him. Because at some point, you're not going to ever know. A lot of times we talk about faith being believing without seeing, which is a cute little phrase, but I think it really misses the point. Faith is when we leave our doubt even though we have no reason to stop doubting. When we don't know all the answers, we don't know why, we say, you know what? I'm going to have to stop doubting anyway because that's the right thing. That's faith. Right? That would be if Thomas said, I'm going to believe you guys, y'all saw Jesus and I don't have to see the holes in the hands and the side in his side. Saying, I'm just going to believe you, that's faith, right? And so at some point we have to be willing to just lay our doubts and move on to faith. So, bringing us back into our Bible story, back to Thomas. So we all know he was not able to leave his doubts there. He had to have the answer. So, a week later, so this is verse 26. A week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. See, he did it right this time. He was there. Let's see here. Although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he turned to Thomas and he yelled at him. Is that what happened? No. Okay. He turned to Thomas and he said, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through believing you may have his life in his name. So, in this story, we see someone who had doubts, just like all of us. He got to live in that doubt for a week, by the way, if you heard in the story there. Jesus didn't come immediately to him. He was there for a week. I can't imagine actually being in that room, scared of the Jews. All these other disciples saying, "Hey, Jesus came and saw us, but we're still scared." And you sitting there going, "I don't believe you guys. And I'm going to sit in here scared too." That feels pretty awkward, honestly. But Jesus came to him. And he brought his questions to Jesus, right? Whenever he was talking to the other disciples, "I have to see the holes in his hands, this hole in his side." Jesus met him there and with mercy and grace said, "Here's what you need," and brought him back. So my hope today is that we can all live in that same confidence and that same faith, even when we're in doubt. And I can tell you right now, I got a lot of doubts going on in our world today. Man, the price of eggs is like $8 a carton of eggs now. It's ridiculous. I think our grocery bill is $200 higher than it was a year ago. There's a lot of doubts, and I told y'all I like the facts. I like everything to line up. Finances, they need to line up. And right now, they ain't looking so good. My 401k, that thing's in the trash right now, right? And so all these things are going on around us, and that's just the finances. There's so much other stuff going on, and I don't want to get political or anything. So we will stop there. But there are so many things going on, and it's not the world that I want to live in. Doubts are creeping in. I'm uncertain, is God really in control? Is this really what he wants for me, for us? And at some point, we've got to work through that together. And this is the group I like to do it with. So I'm so grateful to be in this presence of you guys this morning and in the future as we move forward. And I just hope that we can do those 6 things that I mentioned, that we can be open with each other, honest. We can disagree. We can live in doubt. We can be patient in it. And then at the end of the day, we can together leave it at God's feet. So with that, we're going to head into communion. First off, I'd like to ask anybody who has